One of the things I think it's really important to understand is that anytime I am in a horse's environment, there is some kind of pressure on them, whether I want it to be or not. Sometimes that pressure can be aversive pressure. Sometimes it can be comforting pressure. With my horses that I have built a really good relationship with, I expect that that's going to be a comforting pressure. The same way it is when my wife or my kids are around. When they're in my environment, makes me feel better. Didn't start out that way. When I first met my wife and had no idea who she was, then that pressure came with this expectation that I should be doing something instead of just enjoying the presence. So these horses, with me anyhow, experience my pressure a whole lot different than they do Laura's. Me being in their environment, since I haven't had the day-to-day interactions that make them seek out that relationship, me being in their environment is going to be a little bit aversive. And that's okay. It started out that way with Laura. Laura being in their environment was aversive. But it came to the point where that's a positive thing for them. Now anytime they see her on the property, they come and say, hey, would you scratch me? Would you help me with these flies? Would you connect with me? Would you interact with me? So they start seeking out Laura because that pressure is no longer aversive. It's a positive pressure, but it's still there. We can't get away from the fact that there's pressure. Anytime we're in any kind of context or contact with another individual, there's going to be some kind of pressure there. And the thing people get caught up in is they think all pressure is negative, but it's not. And when you start to thinking that way, then you're losing the potential that positive pressure has. So I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'm going to let them tell me which that is for them. With all the work I've done with them so far, my presence has been an aversive pressure, and that's okay. We have to get through that to get to where it's a positive pressure. And the thing that will keep us from getting through that is, it's like if your boss comes in and sits down across the desk from you and doesn't say anything, just sits there, that pressure becomes aversive pretty quick. And you're either going to go figure out, why are you there? What are you doing? Or you're going to start to try to avoid it. You're going to check out from it. So most of the time, I want to help my horse understand why I'm here. And anytime I help them understand why I'm here, then I'm making some kind of request from them. And Adeline came up and made a request to me. She asked me, why are you here? Tell me why you're here. That's a request. Is there something you want from me? And I didn't answer her. What kind of anxiety do you think that's going to create? If I ask my boss, why did you come in and sit in my office, and he just stares at me or just pretends I'm not there, that's going to create a lot of anxiety in me. And it's going to cause me to either check out from him, or it's going to make me feel a little aggressive. It's either going to make me be passive, or it's going to make me be aggressive. And I don't really want to create either one of those things in my horse. So I'm just going to tell them why I'm here. I would like for you to connect with me. And they say, okay, well, I'm not sure I'm ready for that. And when they say, well, we're willing to quit ignoring you and we're willing to quit resisting you, then the chances for connection start to open up. And I didn't really do anything to make them do that except keep myself focused and myself regulated. And be intentional about what I'm doing, not what I'm wanting to see from them. That's not my goal. My goal is to come in here and control myself and be intentional about what I do and to connect with them enough to notice how it all affects them. Hi, Abilene. How are you, girl? Huh? Hi. Hi, honey. Yeah. The flies are pretty bad this morning. We've had a little rain. This time of year, little rain really seems to bring the flies out. And since they have a pretty good relationship with Laura, they've been letting Laura help them with that a little bit. Except the flies have gotten Annie so dysregulated, she won't even connect with Laura very well. Flies, for a horse, sometimes drive them into the survival parts of their brain, where the thinking, connecting parts of their brain aren't working real well. So I'm going to really listen to them and let them tell me what they think they need from me today. Annie is already pretty well telling me I just need some help to regulate. I'm staying so dysregulated that this is really hard for me. So rhythm is what is conducive for regulation. So I want to have a lot of rhythm in the way I move. At my age, that's not real easy. I want to have rhythm in the area of her brain that I want her to go to from just the survival. So I want to have rhythm that's going to affect her limbic system, her feeling part of her brain. And rhythm in that part of your brain comes from relationship. So I'm going to be real predictable about my relationship. So when she feels my focused pressure, she's going to choose what to do with it. And she's going to choose that out of different areas of her brain. She's going to start out choosing that in the survival parts of her brain. And her answers in the survival parts of her brain are either going to be fight, flight, freeze, and everything else is just a subset of one of those. I want to keep that pressure there till she moves to a higher level of her brain. If I let fight, flight, or freeze, or any of those other things that come from the survival part of my brain work, then she never has to engage any higher in her brain. So I want her to engage higher in her brain, because that's where the regulations are going to come from. So the way I create rhythm in this relationship is I become real predictable. So if I focus my pressure on her rear and she moves toward me for whatever reason, I'm going to release the pressure every time. Every time she checks out or does something to resist that pressure, I'm going to keep it the same. Now, if she goes ahead and checks out and ignores the pressure, then I'm going to have to increase it so that she learns the things that are going to get the pressure released. And she's going to have to move to a higher level in her brain to find that. She can find it in the survival part of her brain right now. I want her to learn to move at least up to the feeling part of her brain, because that's where the regulation's going to start, is by moving a little higher in the brain. So it's not my goal to get her to check out from the flies. I don't want her to ever not notice that the flies are there. But I want her to start worrying about more than just the flies. I want her to start thinking about relationship a little bit. And when she starts doing that, the flies won't have so much control over her. She'll have control over what part of the brain those flies put her in. Abilene already has a little more control over that than Annie does. And that's okay, she's just at a different place in her brain with it than Annie is. Come on. So when she comes at me like that in an aggressive way, I do not release the pressure. I do not want to reward aggression. I don't increase the pressure. As she comes closer to me, she increases the pressure on herself. And if she wants to do that, that's okay with me. But I'm not going to increase it while she's in a state of resistance that way. My Abilene. Hi, honey. Hi. Hi, Abby. There you go, honey. Calm down a little. Hey, girl. Hey. Okay, that time she took a big deep breath, calmed down a little bit, so I'm going to give her a lot more room. I'm going to release the pressure a little bit. Because one of the things I want her to understand is that as she comes to a state of calm, everything starts to feel better. At some point, I hope in our relationship, I can do the same things for her that Abilene does. Because right now, she uses Abilene to regulate a lot. And at some point in our relationship, I hope I can come into this pen with her, and my heart rate and my breathing and my control of myself can help her regulate. The same way that Abilene does for her. And you'll notice when she gets to feeling really dysregulated, she goes to Abilene to help her with that, to hide behind her, to connect with her so that she can get out of this state of fear for just a second. And I want her to eventually be able to do that with me. She can already do it with Laura pretty well. But I don't live with her. I don't live life with her. I don't get to have the hundreds of little interactions a day that Laura does. And those are impossible to film without a camera on her 24 hours a day, because that's where the relationship with Laura has built. I don't get that opportunity. I have to do things a little bit differently. It's a little bit like the difference between someone you work with and one of your customers. With Laura, it's someone she works with. You're going to have a closer relationship that's built on a different dynamic than you are with one of your customers. And one of the things I hope you can see as this goes on is that the calmer Annie becomes, the less the flies irritate her. It's not that she's going to quit noticing them. It's just that in the survival part of my brain, they have a different effect on me than when I'm using my entire brain. There you go, Annie. So one of the basic principles I'm really trying to help her understand is that in a connected relationship, you get some control over how the pressure affects you. That it's not just the other one that has control of that. There you go, girl. Hi, Abilene. Hi, honey. There you go. So just on a cognitive level, Annie already knows how to do this. She already knows how to follow you when you ask. She has that information in the upper levels of her brain. When she's under attack by flies, she don't have access to the upper levels of her brain. As I help her get regulated, she regains access to the upper levels of her brain where she understands how to connect, how to follow, how to cooperate with a request, how to connect. But when the flies have her really dysregulated, she doesn't have access to those areas of her brain where that information is stored. And as she starts to calm down and move toward me, is when she is regaining a little access to that part of her brain. And by being real rhythmic in what I'm doing, real rhythmic with my requests of when I increase pressure, when I decrease pressure, when I keep it the same, is going to help her limbic system regulate enough that she has access again to the thinking part of her brain. And this is the real challenge even with my own kids. I can deal with the one who's dysregulated without disconnecting from the one who's not. So every time Abilene comes up and asks me, are you still connected to me at all? I can tell her, yeah, I'm still with you, but me and Annie are working through some stuff. I'm trying to help Annie with some stuff. I have to do that all the time with my two kids, 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. The 2-year-old is more often dysregulated. So I have to be able to help her with that without disconnecting from my 6-year-old. Otherwise, he wants to be in the middle of everything that we're doing. And it makes it really hard for me to help the 2-year-old regulate if I'm having to reconvince him that I'm connected to him too. One thing I don't want to see is I don't want to see Annie quit noticing the flies completely. Because then she's gone to a part of her brain where she doesn't feel anything and doesn't notice anything. I don't want her in that part of her brain. I don't want her just checked out. She can't feel good about the relationship with me if she checks out from it. So I want to see her still switch at flies, still stomp her leg to get rid of them. But I don't want her to have to ignore me to do that, or have to resist what I'm doing to do that. I want her to be able to notice those while still being a little connected to me. Hi, Abilene. Hi, girl. Hi, girl. Hey, girl. So Abilene is getting to the point where not touching her is aversive pressure. So she has to reach out and touch you because the pressure of us not touching each other gets to be too much for her. So, and I'm sure Annie is that way a lot with Laura most of the time. That the pressure of us not being connected, of us not being in proximity is more than the pressure of us being there. And that's what we're working every day, every little interaction to get these horses to that point. Once they get to the point where being with us is less pressure than being away from us, there's so much more we can do together. And do it safely and in a connected, calm way. And willingly. Kind of the difference between going out for coffee and going out for dinner. I'll go out to coffee with you in an attempt to connect. I'm not going to go to dinner with you unless we're already pretty well connected. And I'm certainly not going to pay for it unless we're really connected. Hi, Abilene. Hi. Hey, girl. One of the ways that I recognize whether she's doing this out of connection or out of appeasement is if she does it better on one side than she does the other, she's still appeasing. She's trying to keep me off of the side she does it easier on. When she connects, she won't really care which side I put the pressure on. As long as it makes a difference to her, then I still worry about her just doing it to get the pressure released. Hi, Abilene. So one of the things you'll notice is that when I put pressure on her right side, she moves her front feet toward me. When I put pressure on her left side, she just moves her back end away. Oh, see, that was a little bit better. Go ahead, Annie, make a liar out of me. Even this has typically been just getting her to hide her rear end from me instead of moving toward me like that. This gets a foot coming toward me. I notice that, but I don't change what I do because of that. Because my goal is not to get her to bring a foot toward me. That will happen when she feels safe enough or endangered enough to do that. I want her to do it when she feels safe enough to come toward me. Not because the danger feels too great that she's afraid to avoid it. So even standing right here in front of her, I can focus my energy on her rear. I'm still not putting pressure on her head. If you watch, I'm going to focus that pressure on her rear because I want her to choose to connect with it. And every time she comes toward it, it goes away. And this is what's happened to our society kind of right now. If I keep my neocortex engaged, I realize I don't need 400 rolls of toilet paper. Unless they run out of coffee filters. In a pinch, you can filter coffee through some wadded up toilet paper. But hopefully we're not going to get to that point. But when we're pushed into the survival part of our brain, we lose the ability to access what's in the thinking part of our brain, if we choose to. We don't have to do that. When we feel that dysregulated, we've got to do something to get ourselves regulated so that we have access to the information we have in the thinking part of our brain. If we're just going to react out of that survival part of our brain, we're going to do things that not only harm us, but harm those around us, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So one of the things I'm really starting to notice with Annie is she's starting to regain access to the thinking part of her brain. Because that's where good decisions are going to come from. They're not going to come from those lower survival parts of our brains. The decisions about how we all get through this are going to come from the thinking part of our brain. The decisions about how I'm going to get through it can come from the lower parts. I don't want to be part of a world where we're making our decisions from the survival part of our brain. Because what happens is those in authority realize we're not going to make good decisions there, so they start making decisions for us. And we see that happening a lot right now. So they need to get me in a round pen and get me regulated, get me back to thinking instead of reacting. So I think our time's up for the day. Thanks for everybody that came to watch. Thanks, Annie, for showing me the willingness to calm down and to start to rethink things a little bit.